All right, continuing on with section 5.9, example 4 says to find the sum of these two complex numbers by graphing on the complex plane. So the first thing that we're going to do is graph each one of them. So the first one is 4 plus 3i. So I'm going to go over 4 and up 3i. And then the other one is negative 2, 1. So I'm going to go left 2 and up 1. Then I'm going to connect both of those dots to the origin. And I'm going to do my best to draw a nice straight line there. Then, once you have that, you are going to figure out how to complete a parallelogram. So let me erase that. So if you can see from the origin over here to the negative 2, 1, I go over 2 and up 1. So I'm going to do that same thing from this other point. I'm going to go back 2 and up 1. And that is where we would have our point so that we have a parallelogram. So this point right here. And so that would make our answer 2 plus 4i. And of course, we can go back and check. We have 4 and negative 2 to put together. That would give me the 2. And then 3i and 1i gives me 4i. So 2 plus 4i is the answer. So that is how you would do it on a coordinate plane if ever asked to do so. Example 5, we're going to multiply and write our result in the form of a plus bi. So what we have to do here is distribute this 2i. So 2i times 3 would be 6i. And then 2i times negative 5i would be negative 10i to the second power. I to the second power is the same thing as negative 1. So this is really 6i minus 10 times negative 1. And then 10 times negative 1 is really 10, positive 10. And then we have 6i, but it wants it in the form of the real number plus the complex number. So we have to flip this around and have, they're both positive, so 10 plus 6i. Then for part B, this one is like a FOIL question. So we have to do firsts. 5 times 4 is 20. Outside, 5 times negative 3i would be negative 15i. Inside would be negative 6i times 4. So that would be a negative 24i. And last, we have negative 6 times negative 3, which would be 18. And I times I is I squared. And I squared is the same thing as negative 1. And if I multiply 18 and negative 1, I'm going to get negative 18. So this is going to simplify down to negative 18. And then I have to combine like terms. So I have 20 and negative 18 that go together to make 2. And then I have negative 15i and negative 24i that would make negative 39i. And that would be my final answer. It's a real number and then the complex number in the back. So same thing here for part C. We're going to have to do the distribution FOIL. So first, 7 times 7 is 49. Outside, we would get negative 14i. Inside, we would have a positive 14i. And last, 2 times negative 2 would be negative 4. I times I is negative, or I squared, which is the same thing as negative 1. And then negative 4 times negative 1 is actually going to be a positive 4. Then we combine like terms. 49 plus 4 would give us 53. And negative 14i and positive 14i cancel out. So 53 is our final answer. Oops. And then here, 6i times 6i. 6 times 6 is 36. I times I is I squared. I squared is the same thing as negative 1. So 36 times negative 1 would be negative 36. Now, here is a chart to help you when you simplify things, multiply things together. If you get I to the first power, that's just I. If you get I to the second power, that's negative 1, all the way up to 12. So this chart is going to come in handy. So For those of you online, maybe take a picture of it or write it down so you have it to use when we take our test, and also for your assignment. So for example 6, we have to simplify. We have negative 3i to the 12th power. So if I go up to the chart, I to the 12th power is 1. So I really have negative 3 times 1, which is negative 3. And then over here I have I to the 25th power. So you're going to rewrite this so that you have an even power. So 25 is 1 and 24. So we can have I to the 1st times I to the 24th. And the reason for doing so is now I can change that to I to the 2nd power, also to the 12th power, because 2 times 12 is 24. And then we still have this I out here that we have to multiply by. And I to the 2nd power is negative 1. So I have I times negative 1 to the 12th power. So what happens when you have negative 1 to the 12th power? If you keep multiplying negative 1 12 times, because there's an even number, the negative sign cancels out and it's just 1. So I have I times 1, and I times 1 is just I. So I to the 25th power simplifies down to I. All right. So we're going to multiply by the conjugate here. So the bottom is 8i, so the opposite is negative 8i. And negative 8i times 3 is going to give us negative 24i. And negative 8i times 7i is going to give us negative 56i squared. And then at the bottom, the denominator is negative 8 times 8 is negative 64. I times I is I squared. So now remember that I squareds are like negative 1s. So I need the eraser here. So timesing both of these by negative 1, that's going to become positive, and so is the 64. Now we have to treat this like two different fractions. So I'm going to look at the first ones, 24 and 64, both can be divided by 8. So negative 24 divided by 8 is negative 3 with the I, and the 64 divided by 8 is still 8. Then I'm going to reduce the back fraction, which is 56 over 64, and that also can be divided by 8. So the 64 divided by 8 is 8. We already have that. 56 divided by 8 is 7, so plus 7. So now I want to flip this around so that my real number is first. So the 7 over 8 is first, so 7/8. And then the 3i is negative, so it's going to be minus, and 3i over 8. So 3/8i is the correct way to write 3i over 8. And then our last one here, we're going to multiply by the conjugate, which is the opposite of the denominator here. So it's going to be 2 plus 4i. And we're going to have to do FOIL at both the top and the bottom. So when I do FOIL, I'm going to have 5 times 2 is 10. Then 5 times 4 is 20i. And then I times 2 is going to be 2i. And last, 4i times I is going to be 4i squared. And then at the bottom, 2 times 2 is going to be 4. 2 times negative 4 is going to be negative 8i. And then 4i times 2 is going to be a positive 8i. And 4i times negative 4i is going to be negative 16i squared. So now we have to simplify this. The I squareds are going to be multiplied by negative 1. Or negative 1. So the 4 is going to become negative 4. And then 16 times negative 1 is going to become a positive 16 here. I squared goes away. And then we combine like terms at both the top and the bottom. So at the top, I can put the two middles together. So I would have 10 plus 22i minus 4. And then at the bottom, the 8 i's go away, but they are going to cancel because one's positive, one's negative, and I have 4 plus 16, which is 20. And then at the top, I can do 10 minus 4 as well. 10 minus 4 is 6. And now I have to reduce this fraction. 6 and 20, I can divide both of those by a 2. So I'm going to have 3 over 10 for that fraction. And then 22 and 20 also can be divided by 2. So I'm going to have 11 over 10i.